Jesus was worshipped. Quote, and David said, now bless the Lord your God. And all the congregation bowed down their heads and worshipped the Lord and the King. 1 Chronicles 29:20. Trinitarianism argues that since Jesus was worshipped, Matthew 8:2, 9:18, 15:25, etc., he must be God. But in 1 Chronicles 29:20 above, the same single act of worship is rendered to both God and King David simultaneously. This does not mean that they are the same person. The Hebrew word translated worship here is shakah, S-H-A-C-A-H, Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, number 7812. It is defined by Strong's as to depress, i.e. prostrate, especially in homage to royalty or God. The meaning of biblical worship. Quote, homage paid to a superior, especially, but not exclusively, to God. McClintock and Strong Biblical Cyclopedia. Acts of reverence to human superiors as well as supernatural. International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. To respect, honor, treat with civil reverence. The King James Version Dictionary. Throughout the Bible, worship, homage, and reverence is rendered to others besides God. For example, Old Testament Shekah. Abraham rendered Shekah to people, Genesis 23:7. Jacob rendered Shekah to his brother, Genesis 33:3. David rendered Shekah to Jonathan, 1 Samuel 24:8. Joab rendered Shekah to the king, 2 Samuel 14:22. The Jews rendered Shekah to a prophet, 2 Kings 2:15. The city of Jerusalem is said to receive Shekah, Isaiah 60:14. While translators generally render Shekah as worship when it is given to God and bowed to, prostrated before, etc., when it is given to humans, it is the same Hebrew word and denotes the same physical act of bowing, kneeling, or prostrating oneself in reverence. New Testament, proskinao. The Greek equivalent to the Hebrew shakah in the New Testament is proskinao, Proskyneio. Strong's Greek Dictionary, number 4352, defined by Strong's as to fawn or crouch to prostrate oneself in homage, parenthesis, do reverence to, adore. This word is variously rendered worship, fall down before, etc. When Jesus quotes Exodus 3:14 at Matthew 4:10, saying, it is written, thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve, shakah is translated proskunao. God is saying there that we shall not worship any other God except him. Quote, thou shalt worship no other God, Exodus 34:14. In the Bible, worship is also appropriately rendered to others besides God, just as God's anointed kings, priests, and prophets were worshipped in the Old Testament, so Jesus, God's anointed king, priest, prophet, and Savior, was worshipped in the New Testament. While the New Testament does say that Jesus was worshipped, it does not say that he was worshipped as God. Furthermore, In Matthew 18:23 through 29, Jesus tells a parable of a man rendering proskuneo to his human king. In his notes on the Bible, Albert Barnes tells us, quote, "This was the mode in which homage was paid to earthly kings." In Revelation 3, 7, and 11, Jesus says to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, generally understood to be either its human leader or an angel watching over it, but not God himself, that he, Jesus, will, quote, "make them to come and worship, proskuneo, before thy feet." Barnes' notes on the Bible tells us, quote, "The word rendered worship here means properly to fall prostrate and then do homage, either the worship of God or respect as shown to superiors." But don't men and angels reject worship in the New Testament? Sometimes in the New Testament, worship is rejected, not because only God is to be worshipped, but rather because it is offered for the wrong reasons. In Revelation 19:10, John attempts to worship an angel and is told, quote, "See thou do it not, I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Jesus." But John was not attempting to worship the angel as God. Quote, "His prostration was not intended as an act of religious worship. It was merely an act of reverence paid to a superior." Clark's commentary. The angel makes clear that he is not John's superior, but of equal rank in service to God. This is why he is refusing worship. Quote, "The angel gives him a reason, because he was his equal in office, his fellow servant." Matthew Poole's commentary. Quote, "This mistake the angel very properly corrects, showing him that he was a fellow servant, no higher in dignity, and therefore not entitled to his prostration." Clark's commentary. In Acts 10:25 and 26, a Roman centurion attempts to worship Peter. He was unlikely to have been familiar with the biblical practice of worshiping God's representatives, but in all probability was attempting to worship Peter as a deity, for Peter tells him, quote, "Stand up, I myself am also a man." In Acts 14:11 and 12, Paul and Barnabas are thought to be gods. The people begin to worship them as such. Paul and Barnabas reject this, not because they are not worthy of worship as God's representatives, but because the people are honoring them as deities, saying, "Turn from these vanities unto the living God." Summary. Throughout the Bible, the act of worship is not reserved exclusively for God, but is properly rendered to a host of other personages as they represent and serve him, or simply as an expression of honor to persons in their own right. Conclusion. As God's anointed priest, prophet, king, and savior, the worship of Jesus is consistent with both Old and New Testament practices and is appropriate on that basis, but in no way proves that he is God. For Jesus, just as for King David, the receipt of worship neither implies an acknowledgement that he himself is God, nor establishes the idea that those rendering worship to him were proclaiming him to be God.